encyclopedia. We're bringing an end to this mass hysteria. They wanna know why it's so serious, cause you must be delirious. If you're still believing stuff, get a grip and show some evidence for your own claims. We don't play no games, we stay relentless, exposing those events. With the IPS are making an entrance, busting doors down, cause now's the time for interventions that I mentioned. We're affecting so many men across the spectrum. We stand out from the crowd, we don't blend in. Steady gaining tremendous momentum. There's nothing close to resembling. Check the emblem, it's a penguin, not a gremlin. Just letting you know you're on an infinite plane, it's never bending. We strike like temping, killing all fears and breaking the tension. Gotta know the hopes army, digging deep in the trenches. Come and join in, be adventurous. Quit being so sensitive, forget the censorship. We ain't telling fibs. Messing with the penguin. We're messing with the penguin. You're messing with the penguin. You're messing with the penguin. Messing with the penguin.
All right, we are live. April 14th, 2024. That would be Fepe Akbar, Allergic to Bullshit, featuring Lean Dion. Phones are open, 505-349-0420. Want to catch up on anything we didn't get to yesterday. I was hoping to have a whole 3-hour block of time yesterday, but I had some other things to attend to. But we are here today to catch up. The title of tonight's live stream is WW, or World War ZZZZZZZ. Because we've been hearing that World War III starts pretty much every single day, every episode of InfoWars since probably when it started. And if it's not World War III, it's Civil War. But it's one or the other. And at this point, I think we need to go ahead and just wait until something actually happens before we start overreacting. Because you cry wolf so many times. When it finally starts, none of us are going to be watching on TV, which is, I think, what we're supposed to be doing, right? Behold the End War live. That is the script. Today I was listening to JL26, Jurassic Liars. Actually, we've been recently speaking about internet prophets and how many of them seem to be drowning out authentic meta script interpretations, and he's picked up on some pretty strong threads. So I was catching up with him, and he's definitely on top of things, and we're going to talk tomorrow. So tomorrow, 6 p.m. Mountain, I will be live with the full expectation that Jurassic Liars and I are going to catch up on the last year, which should be fascinating. I mean, he has picked up some incredible patterns. I mean, this is not this Gematria nonsense, although he does note patterns that have to do with the numerical value of letters, because we aren't deciphering. These things have been enciphered. There is a code. There is a language that reaches us on multiple levels, and it is worth listening to the information, the evidence, even if you don't, I mean, we're talking about objective facts, even if you don't agree with the full conclusions, and you'll find these facts to be very interesting. Just the strange connections, or what I'm considering to be, of course, scripted, but we'll have to listen to him, and we'll get him on tomorrow. And I'm also, well, I'll leave this one. I have an interview I'll be doing tomorrow, kind of a one-on-one thing, pre-recorded, but I'll let you know after the fact because it's pre-recorded and I don't want to announce it now because I don't want any of my troll enemies to try to get in the way. Joined by exploringagain.com, Let's Go, the HBIC, Matt X, Osher, Booster Bear. Ears Up, Let's Go, Elephant Tusks, Jimbo Akimbo says good day from Australia. Oh yeah, you had a very stabby psyop down there in Melbourne. Like all psyops, this one was full of holes. Hole in a baby, in fact. They throw around the word baby in these psyops these days as a trigger word, if you noticed. It's always about the babies. And this is not a new thing. It's like 1 minute it's some internet influencer, astrologer who predicted the end of the world would come with the apocalypse, throws her baby out the window. Now you have this other baby getting stabbed by some guy who didn't have any blood on him. Didn't even seem like he wanted to claim hero status on TV because he just happened to walk in front of the news cameras. I mean, without even addressing the lack of blood and all this stuff, just the very way they present these stories indicate that you're not looking at a crime scene. You don't have a crime scene go off and then you have reporters there to interview victims. The scene has to be cleared. It's just nonsense. We talk about this all the time, but the standard protocols are never observed when they're shooting a movie, pretending like it's a real event. All right, joined by Buzz Dean, Lord Dorkington, Copaesthetic. Thomas Hughes says, Word. Elephant Tusk says, curious to hear you decode Civil War. Yeah, I'm going to watch it tomorrow. So any channel support that you send to the Super Chats tonight will go toward essentially buying me popcorn for my front row seat there at Civil War. And I plan to watch it, and I'll bring a notebook, and I'll basically do what I always do. I go to these movies not with the intention of being entertained, but with the intention of objectively analyzing propaganda for what it is. And it's not just the movies. You have to watch the trailers because it's all part of the same set of ideas and messaging. They're usually contiguous. It's fascinating. When you enter into the black box. Mango Penguins, Jay Diggs, Aries 1, Jungle Jim. All right, we have a nice set of people here. We have a raft, a full raft practically. And if you don't know what the raft is, a raft is what penguins do when they pile up on the water. You know, it's kind of like a huddle, but it's on the water. And the world stage is actually underwater. It's submerged beneath the sea of irrelevance. But we're not. You see, we're not lost. We're not drowning in mis, and disinformation. We are informed and we're parsing the information. The end of the world is a product. A quote from Fallout from Duas Impera. Yeah, I started watching that and it opens up with the Vault 33. Everybody's wearing, what is with all the 33s? And I know there's some strong subtext there, but also consider it's Jonathan Nolan, brother of Christopher Nolan. So one Nolan brother does Oppenheimer, the nuke. The next one does Fallout, what happens after. Their family is in the PSYOP entertainment business. It's a good place to be. I mean, I've said for a few years that crisis acting is the new Hollywood. That psyops is like means that you have some kind of security clearance. It's way more impactful than regular movies because the psyop movies actually influence reality. It's another level of art. You know, you got your 3D sculptures, 2D paintings, and then you get into movies. It's in time. You could say 4D, but when you're doing movies that intersect with reality and change it, uh, psychological operations, that's next level. It's 5D art is what I call it. And they all want to be in on it. In fact, something came up with the Stabby psyop there in Melbourne. Check this out. The Westfield Massacre, 6 dead, 3 victims that are all connected to prominent MSM and sports figureheads, and a Bondi rescue actor that assisted in the tragic aftermath. This, again, is a Stabby psyop full of holes. Here's just a few examples. You have a person from the news media here reveals family member stabbed in the attack. Heartbreaking details emerge after John Singleton's daughter, Dawn Singleton, named as Bondi Junction Westfield stabbing victim. Ashley Good mourned by North Melbourne AFL Club in heartbreaking matchday tribute. Again, we're looking at just some coincidences. But you see what I mean? It's a business. And you want to be in this. If you're in the PSYOP entertainment complex, you want to be out there in front. I think it's like a status symbol. I mean, look at Tom Hanks and many of these other celebrities, without whose help these big PSYOPs wouldn't be easy to sell. Because you don't know anybody personally affected by these things, but you have these people who are part of your psyche. Like, unfortunately, Tom Hanks is in all of our minds. He's America's dad or whatever, but they put him out there so that you at least have a frame of reference. Okay, somebody I know has it. And that feedback is what takes a superstition and turns it into a hyperstition. It makes it, quote, real. Real on the world stage, which isn't the real world. The map is not the territory. It's just the worldview as framed by the power elite. Diana South says, crisis actors are the unsung heroes of Hollywood. Well, the Hollywood stars getting into it is one thing. A lot of these various celebrities lend their support, and I definitely agree they aren't. I don't even think the crisis actors have good representation. You know, the flesh and blood Hollywood actors are protesting because they don't want to be replaced by AI. But who's going to stop the crisis actors from being replaced by AI? Or hyper realistic simulated training dummies that bleed and breathe? because there are already simulated corpses that can be operated on. I mean, it's incredible. Like bodies that are capable of breathing and bleeding. They look completely real, indistinguishable from the real thing. I mean, it's foolproof. But crisis actors, unfortunately, are likely replaceable. But as you said, unsung heroes. Commenter says it must be real. I saw it on TV. Yeah, certainly. As Richard Nixon said, the American people won't believe anything until they've seen it on TV. It's absolutely the case. Mango Penguin says, my imaginary heart goes out to the imaginary victims. Thomas Hughes says, I use the term about TV real to describe certain events. Yeah, now on this, we're talking about simulated events versus the real thing, and we're not reality denialists here. I see the real thing. In fact, my background in decedent transport, working for the county morgue and embalming, I have a level of experience around death scenes, around the bereaved, and one of my first clues to the fakery was just the way that the standard procedure for entering a crime scene or a violent scene is never observed when it comes to these stories. You can tell it's a movie production, and that's not even looking at the so-called victims. And there's all kinds of problems with that proposition that eyewitnesses would go on TV and put their faces on TV when you don't know the full extent of the crime itself. There could be other perps, and now they know the witnesses. None of that makes sense, but let's stay on topic here. Nick Fingar says, I'm behind on the whole Iran-Israel movie. Anything particular catch your all eyes? It was just fireworks, as usual. A lot of hype. Again, World War ZZZZZ. I'm not seeing anybody losing any sleep over it. And I'll show you here, I've seen a few things that are typical for these types of events. And this is like right-wing influencers jumping on to video game footage, jumping onto claims that things are going crazy, that the airports are shut down, and then right beneath them, they get fact-checked. So these community notes, like them or not, they are getting a lot of people to have to kind of, I don't know, they don't even backtrack on it, but it kind of takes away their power to gin up stuff. So for example, Michael Reif on X says, look how creepy this is here in DC. Tell me we aren't preparing for war. So he's showing the skies in DC, there's no planes. Well, the readers added context. Air traffic in and out of DC is active. Flights are moving normally. FlightAware.com. So here's somebody with millions of subscribers, big channels, and he's just like, yes, war is coming. Gets a lot of engagement, and then turns out he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he leaves the post up. Got a comment here. Warrior Monk says, a normie friend just texted to say she knew the mother in the stabbing event. Looks like a crisis actor trying to piss off one of the remaining friends I have. They already think I'm mad, I guess. That's the second person that I know who knows somebody attached to this event. Small world. And look, I think it's very important since we know what's going on. We don't merely believe it. We don't have a partisan belief system that was prepackaged and set aside for us. Since we know what's going on, we can now communicate to people, speak to people at their frame, with their level of understanding. And the people who are in the mainstream media normal worldview, the Normieville perspective, they have no concept of psychological operations or psyops. They just don't know. So you couldn't tell them something like that without it sounding crazy. And the bias built into that worldview would categorize you as a conspiracy theorist, throws you on the right, instant discrediting. So I don't even go there with the normies. I say don't wake the normies. Our main focus should be going through Trutherville and making distinctions between false flags and simulated events and other areas where they're just generally wrong by tradition, by habit, by design. But yes, our quality control measures and our attempts to recruit the best need to be focused in Trutherville, not Normieville. Let the dreamers dream. We're reaching those who are having the nightmare experience. Now here is cover art from The Economist, and The Economist predicts the future. If you didn't know, they always do. This cover was from last month. It says Israel alone, very prophetic, just the Israeli flag, and just a little ominous, I would say. Not surprising. Catching up on your comments here. Dewis in Paris says Tom Hanks' Simpsons cameos had Tom say something to the effect of, quote, "I'm here to lend credibility to the U.S. government." Yeah, I'd like to find that exact quote because I'm suggesting that's the case. I think it's pretty obvious that there's a level where some people just get in the know. It's a privilege. I think our information is privileged information. Like think about someone like William Shatner, another actor. And I used to ask the question, who's the better astronaut, who's the better actor, Buzz Aldrin or William Shatner? And I've always said that Buzz Aldrin's a better actor because he's stayed in character all these years, whereas William Shatner is a better astronaut insofar as being an astronaut is faking it. And nobody has faked being in space in more environments than Shatner. Now, Shatner recently went to space on Bezos's Dr. Evil Dong rocket, and he came down saying that the Earth looked like it was dying. He felt like he was at a wake for Gaia, and there's a catastrophic event coming. But my point of it is, he didn't go to space. He went into a sim. He knows it. So he's at that level, what I call the capstone level of awareness. And you get to this point of privilege, like, yeah, we control the lemmings. We put them into these boxes, and it keeps them in a subjective world of belief. It's just like the Hunger Games or Westworld. We're just Sims in Westworld. We're Trumans in a Truman Show. And Christoph is up there saying people just accept the reality that they're presented with, which is true. But my point is, we have insights, we have a perspective that we're not supposed to have because we don't have the security clearance, we didn't take the blood oaths, we didn't sacrifice whatever you have to do to get to the top of the pyramid. But we found out through glitches and human intel, rational parsing of the facts, and we don't know it all. But we are far more informed about how this thing works than regular bottom rung crisis actors and psyop operatives who are probably still in Normieville cognitively, their frame of reference. Continuing. Mango Penguin says, I need to go to sleep. Lull me away, Tim. Good night. Be safe. Yeah, and I hope that this isn't the one time that we're wrong. Like, I'm like, yeah, go to sleep. And we're actually wrong. Nukes are real. And you wake up to a flash and it's all over. And you could have gotten into your bunker, but I lulled you into a false sense of security. Like, I hope we're not wrong. And I hope you do have nice dreams and sleep peacefully. Dewis in Paris says, will the fake Iran-Israel proxy war be bigger than the fake Iraq first and second episodes included proxy war? Well, let's see. I mean, look to Netflix, look to recent movies to get an idea of where this is at. Someone had asked me yesterday if I'm aware or if I'm familiar with the little season theory. So I looked it up, and I found something called the Doctrine of Last Things, Satan's Little Season. And I think this is what the commenter was referring to, and it talks about on the topic of eschatology. And when I say eschatology, I'm not talking about climate change. I'm talking about the old eschatology, the traditional religious type. And it's about the loosing of Satan into the world in Revelations 20, chapter 7. Are we living in that time, the tribulation? And I was told by someone that the 2017 eclipse to the 2024 eclipse was the tribulation, so we may have just lived through it. That's pretty much all I have to say on it. I just barely scratched the surface on this topic, but if anyone wants to call, are we living in the tribulation or did we just win? I mean, pass? Did we survive? What comes? When are they bringing out the med beds? If you're not familiar with med beds, they're back. It's a big thing among the Nonner crew, the QAnoners. They believe that we're going to be given a upgrade collectively in our technology, some kind of medical pods, kind of like Matrix pods, and you go inside and it cures you of everything physically. I don't think they do anything mentally. Like, you're not going to go in the pod and come out suddenly like, why did I believe JFK Jr. was alive again? Okay, 1 second here. It looks like Microsoft is trying to hijack my screen. Unbelievable. Microsoft Edge, best performing browser. It's trying to get me to sign in, and it just totally took over my screen. So I'm trying to close the window and unpin it from my taskbar. It's literally a gremlin. It's just hijacked my whole screen. Let's see. I'm going through your comments. By the way, Simpsons have had so many episodes that at this point, I think it's safe to say that any argument about Simpsons predicting the future has been nullified, and you could just consider it to be part of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Because there's just too many examples. It's too voluminous. They've predicted every conceivable possible outcome. Therefore, we can no longer reference Simpsons predictive programming. I mean, you can for stuff in the past, 9/11, sure. But other than that, and who watches it anyway? I think to consider something as relevant predictive programming, it has to be something that you can reasonably expect everybody has seen, and I don't think anybody watches that anymore. All right, let's see. Rise Melbourne said, "News stabbing hoax. Wake up, people. You're watching a movie. If you believe this attempted CPR is real, you must have had 25 jabs." So there's a scene in this particular event where you do, and I don't want to play it live because we might get censored, but there's someone just standing around lazily. Well, come on, we'll just go with it. There's a link at minds.com/infinite plane society. There's someone standing around lazily. The officer just stands by, just like nothing's going on, and then just gets on their knees and starts doing compressions on the person's belly. Now, we've seen one-handed moving CPR with Nipsey that seemed pretty questionable. Then there was that thing in South Korea where they had the Halloween trampling, and during the song Staying Alive, you had like 50 people doing CPR to 50 people, and one of them didn't have a partner to simulate it with, so he was doing compressions on somebody's thigh. But anyway, this is another one. Just looks very questionable. Dodgy massage parlor, yeah, something like that. They Lie We See says, "Is actor Klaus Schwab being retired?" Yeah, let me bring this up because I see this meme going around that Klaus Schwab is on his deathbed, not in a med bed. That's only for the good guys when they release it, so he's actually dying. Like that scene when Darth Vader takes his helmet off. That's what the truthers are spreading around. But Mike Rothschild posted something about this where he looked it up and he couldn't find anything to corroborate with this. He couldn't find anything anywhere outside of a few Twitter accounts to suggest that there's any truth to it. So I would just say that it's probably doom hopium or hopium. It's probably fake news. And a lot of and this is just typical now. I mean, we're always talking about this, but a lot of what passes for truth, quote, is like just basically memes, and a lot of it is just wishful thinking. But the Klaus Schwab thing, do we have any proof that he's in? Here we go. Breaking, and this is from Leading Report. Breaking, WEF founder has been admitted to the hospital. And then you have this QAnoner named 17 Thank Q, and he says, boom. Now, boom has been this Q tagline, and they write it with Q's in it, BQQM. Boom means they're winning. Big win for Q. And they love these booms. They get the boom, and then they move on. And if they find out there was nothing there, it doesn't matter. They got the hit. You see, it's just about the hit. But he's one of these fake villains. You know, like there's a few characters to look at. Just contrast these characters. Bill Gates, Elon Musk. One is a villain, one is a savior to the right. And then to the left, I mean, it's just like, how does this work? Can you be both? So is Elon Musk a villain and Bill Gates a savior? Well, if you're on the left, you would say so. But if you're on the right, it's the opposite. How does that work? One is responsible for, the virus agenda. The other is the mind virus agenda. But they're both billionaires, and they're each basically villains to the opposite side, and I'm suggesting that these guys are fake and it's part of the clown show. Somebody spelled cringe with a Q. I like that. Q is very cringe. The fact that these people are always cheering, like I saw one where they're cheering the death of Tom Hanks, and like, yeah, he was executed, and I just go in there pretending to be one of them, and I'm pretending to be a bloodthirsty QAnoner, and I'm like, aren't you guys glad that we murdered Tom Hanks? And they're all like, yeah, thumbs up, Patriot, USA, USA, American flag, MAGA. I'm like, so we're here on Twitter cheering the death of a celebrity in some secret tribunal. Like that's not even American. It's not even patriotic. But we're like, good job, patriots. Tom Hanks is dead, and we have no knowledge that he's dead. I mean, how sick is that? It's a religious cult. It's a bizarre mind control experiment run amok. Shelley Molinax posted this just a few minutes ago. Look, JFK Jr.'s plane never crashed, all caps. It's right there. They tried to kill Jr. Someone has his plane. And there's a photograph of a plane which noners believe is JFK Jr.'s. Now, the JFK Jr. thing is fascinating to me because there's about half a dozen men who have pretended to be him for the groupies. That's why. From Vincent Fuchsia, I mean, you can't blame them. Negative 48, 107, all these guys have basically tapped into JFK Jr.'s fan base and made themselves rock stars. So I'm looking at Negative 48, the one with all the numerology who crashed on his motorcycle and died tragically, supposedly, although they think he faked his death so he could come back later as JFK Jr. But that aside, when he died, I thought, when Q came along, it gave his life a new purpose. Became an internet superstar. He had a big cult at the death site of JFK. Like, you can't say he didn't, live his best life on the way out. As unethical as it is to claim somebody else's groupies. Lean Dion says, should you do CPR on a stab victim bleeding? Good question. Thomas Hughes says, Q is a way to consolidate and make ridiculous all conspiracy theories. Yes, and this is why we need to stick to the flat earth question. Not as a belief, but we need to keep raising the question. Because the Q movement created a massive umbrella that gathered all alternative thinkers. But it stuck them with Space Force. It stuck them with literal belief in NASA and aliens, and it primed them up for the alien invasion. Not to mention it dragged them back into the political horseshoe. And suddenly they were shunning the flat earth question. Q said the earth is not flat. My point being, if they're not asking that question, they have accepted the version of reality given to us by NASA. And NASA is not there to take you to outer space. They're there to conform your inner space, your mind, to their particular worldview. Matt everywhere. Peace, everyone. Thank you for joining. K. Gray Speaks. Kia is here. Let's see. Howard Boyd. Again here. Thank you. Thank you for showing up and commenting. I'll be handing out wrenches. Appreciate all of the participation in the think tank. Here we go. Mike Rothschild says, the far-right conspiracy sphere is buzzing that WEF head Klaus Schwab has been hospitalized, except no news outlet has reported this. I cannot find any evidence this is true. It doesn't matter, because if he shows up on the news tomorrow, they're going to say it's a clone, or that he's dead and this is an actor, and then they'll tell you who's playing him. So it doesn't matter. They are reality fluid. We have received 100 messages so far this evening. Very busy chat, very active. Now, we at the IPS firmly remain grounded in reality, and I put out a podcast earlier today at timosman.blog, and I'll send it out to the Patreon and other subscribers. But basically, the reason why we are talking about the frame of reference so much is that we're getting really close to a breaking point that needs to happen, and we're going to force this breaking point to happen. And this idea of the raft is not merely a metaphor, it's actually a strategy. for remaining outside the control of the controlled opposition. And the numbers of individuals at our level of skepticism and awareness about media is growing. And we are indeed, I think, splintering away from a lot of the orthodoxies that hamstring the truther movement and keep it really within the controlled arena. Thomas Hughes says, the first time I caught you, I usually listen at 5 a.m. while I'm at work. Awesome. Well, I'm going to be live earlier tomorrow even because we're going to be speaking with JL26 Jurassic Liars. It will be nice to catch up. It's been more than a year since we've spoken, and his take on things is intriguing. And the links, the connections, the things that I am most interested in are those things that are objective examples of some kind of pre-scripted narrative being played out. All right, moving on. So I'm going to have to watch Civil War to do a review. I do want to watch Ghostbusters Frozen Empire and Godzilla X Kong New Empire because I think Frozen Empire is a reference to, like Game of Thrones, winter is coming, nuclear winter. And it's interesting that both of these use the phrase or the word empire. Frozen Empire, New Empire. Empire begins with EMP. So the electromagnetic pulse, which has been discussed more and more frequently, and the public is being prepared for EMP. In the last 3 or 4 months, I've been making it a point to frequent the library often, and I take out about half a dozen books at a time, and I usually end up reading about half of them. Depends on what they are, but my point of it is I've made it a point just to keep books around and constantly be taking in new information because a targeted search on the internet is like a spotlight, whereas a search through books is more like a floodlight, like it's a broader view, a wider range of information, and it just goes deeper. Internet can be very shallow, and to me it's just like also the case that if they do pull the plug on stuff, we're not going to have anything. So we need something tangible, and I'm surprised that they didn't decide that books were all super spreaders. I think that was one of the narratives they were pushing in 2020. The whole Fahrenheit 454. But I'm just suggesting that having 451, having the collection of physical books is probably going to be something I'm going to maintain as well as we go into print. The idea of having all of these articles, even a lot of our interviews, put into the print tabloid and then made downloadable with QR codes. So, for example, you get a tabloid, you get the articles, you're reading the interviews, and you just download from our source. So we have to be able to survive any interruptions, and I'm not sure how widespread they would possibly go with an EMP. I've always said this in the beginning, that my take has been that they wouldn't risk unplugging too many of us at once because it might result in some kind of spontaneous rejection of the official narratives. But now looking at it, no, I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. I think people will self-organize around the big lies. Like, I do think the system is more or less embedded in people's minds, and they wouldn't have the right frame of reference to break free, even if you pulled the plug for a few months. But yeah, someone comments here, you could get a lot of real work done. That's kind of what I was thinking. I'll get a lot of reading done. I think it would be great. I would not be bothered one bit if they managed to kill the web for a little while. I don't think we automatically start eating our neighbors, and that's what they want you to think. It's only true if you live near Alex Jones, but most of us aren't ready to go eat our neighbors. Multi-C Zero Dagger says, a week ago I was watching Godzilla with my kids, not worth the big screen, wasted $50. Well, I watched Godzilla -1, and I thought it was very interesting. It was very decent. In fact, it was kind of like they made Godzilla into a right-wing culture warrior. The whole movie Godzilla -1 was about after the nuke, building back a nuclear family, reuniting a family, traditional values, men gathering together to fight for their nation and for the future, sacrificing themselves. It was the complete opposite of Barbie and Barbie feminism and the Kenified men, superfluous, and the girls at the beginning killing their baby dolls by dashing their heads against the rocks. Complete opposite. One is about the splitting up of the nuclear family, and the Godzilla Minus One is about putting it back together. And these movies are paired together. And that's why I need to watch the new Godzilla, because these are metaphors. Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. Barbie is the Whore of Babylon, the goddess the elite worship. Well, the masses worship, I should say. You know, when you say the masses and you say the elite, you're talking about the same thing. The masses are the puppets of the puppeteers at the top. They're an extension. Howard Boyd says, Civil War is Hollywood corny, but the truth is there. Timmy, bro, the film is whack acting, but still check it out. Will do. I plan to watch it tomorrow, and I'm looking for what I consider to be like the meta script is conveyed in multiple levels, like the soundtracks. You have to look at the soundtrack to leave the world behind to get the full story. And what it shows you too, and this is an important point for those who still think that predictive programming is magic. The movie, like, for example, Leave the World Behind is a perfect example. That movie is obviously planting messages with very specific political import. 1619, White Lion. These are things you'd have to dig for. But you'd also have to be aware of the political dynamic of the day and what 1619 means relative to 1776 and how that plays into the story with Kevin Bacon and, of course, the racism of Julia Roberts' character, the obliviousness of her husband. These are all things that are also discussed by the author of the book, by the way, the main theme to the movie, what it's conveying. But my point of it is, nothing there is random. Predictive programming's not random. It is target marketing of ideas. But this Leave the World Behind is just such a perfect example of how this all works. You know, there's a scene where Julia Roberts' character is in front of a painting that is black with white stripes that form like cones, like Klansmen. And she's standing in front of one like she's wearing a Klan hood. Like, that is all by design. And that movie had a lot about it that I thought was just terrible as far as acting, but that wasn't the point. I was watching it to get the deeper message, and it's all definitely there, and it's layered. I mean, the T-shirts were pretty obvious. Obey and NASA. Something else, and I brought this up it's in my notes here, so when I talk to JL tomorrow, the little girl represents Donnie Darko, and Donnie Darko is Donald Trump, and she goes into the bunker at the bottom to watch the world end, and there's some suggestion there that the final scene represents the person detonating a nuke. There's something there. I'm gonna have to watch that ending again, but anyway, that movie is just extremely nuanced, full of predictive programming, and the coincidental relationship between what you see in the movie and what happens in the quote real world after in the news. These are not coincidences. These are planned. These are indicators of the, like I said, the contiguous relationship between entertainment and news. And it's important not to mystify it and say, man couldn't have done this. This is too well orchestrated. Well, no, we live in a movie. They have merged our internal concept of the world with whatever's on their screen. And there's no meaningful distinction between news and entertainment and politics and religion. It is an integrated, monolithic whole. It always has been. Catching up on comments. Okay, excellent. Duos in Paris says, I have to admit, Julia Roberts triggers me. Well, that movie is based on a book, Leave the World Behind, and the author had said it was very eerie how his movie, and it was almost like, in his view, he had, in an interview he had said his movie was, or his book rather, his book was coming to life in 2020. That when he wrote this book, it was about isolation, about remaining in your basements, not knowing what's happening, waiting for the news to tell you what's going on. And it was about locking down. And that kind of theme then manifested in 2020. And he talked about this connection as though it was eerie to him, but he had that duper's delight. In fact, someone had posted something in Discord. I think it was Violet, but Francis Ford Coppola, Godfather director, had made a comment about how one of his scripts was modified. They took page like 166 out because it so closely predicted 9/11. It was just like 9/11. Let me see if I can find that exact storyline. I think it was called. I'll get it here in a minute. Last week was interesting. We were going over Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus when he was 33 years old in the Mel Gibson film Passion of the Christ. And during the filming of the movie, during the Sermon on the Mount, according to them, on like the fifth take, Jim Caviezel was struck by lightning and he died. And they had to bring him back to life, which they did. He survived. And he was telling this story, and he's like, yeah, this is the first time I'm telling this story. And I'm thinking, wait a minute here. You have on video yourself getting struck by lightning, and you're not going to share that. You're just going to tell us about it years later. Okay, here we go. I looked up, this is the one. Ford Coppola movie Megaopolis premieres on May 17th. The plot details have been kept secret, but what little we know is interesting in light of the New York nuclear thing I pointed out. Okay, here's a storyline. An architect wants to rebuild New York as utopia following a devastating disaster. And let me get the exact quote here. Francis Ford Coppola wrote the script in the early 80s, but the film was kept on the back burner due to his financial debts. Pre-production began in 2001 after filming 30 hours of second unit footage and holding a table read with Uma Thurman, Robert De Niro, Nicolas Cage, Gandolfini, DiCaprio, Crowe, Falco, Spacey. However, the project was scrapped after September 11th because a scene from the script predicted the attacks. Coppola abandoned the project and didn't begin again until 2019. So he abandoned a project because a crucial scene in it predicted 9/11. Now, what are we going to make of this? Did he have some kind of divine higher consciousness tap in, like some kind of channeling session? Did he read the zeitgeist in his subconscious and just write it into the script? Or are these big movie producers given certain ideas, motifs, and who knows, input without their full understanding or grasp of what it actually is? I think it's far more intentional than not. And a good example of this, Stephen King's sequel to The Shining has a child that predicts 9/11. And why that matters? The Shining predicts 9/11. The movie, that is. Okay, moving on. By the way, there's a link in the chat to the Ko-Fi. And if you go on that site, you'll see I have a couple of things you may want to look at in the shop. We have the signed Auto Hoaxology 101 paperback. I've made a few of these available, specifically because, here we go, paperback, because it's much cheaper than hardback, and I can move a lot more of these. And the whole point of it is that we need to have a codified, I would say, not belief system, but methodology, something that we all agree is valid. We all accept the premise that the media is lying, skepticism is warranted. But I took all of our best ideas and I put it in Auto Hoaxology 101, but I made the paperback available on Amazon. And that is going to be the basis for a lot of the debates and discussions we're going to have in the coming weeks, months, as this, whatever you want to call this splintering of Trutherville into an authentic off-world stage presence. I think it could be more or less like a litmus test. It could be the standard for what a media skeptic should accept as the rational way to approach media. And what the book does is it just kind of deconstructs the basic notion of the mainstream media as an authority, why we should reject it as an authority, why we should have higher standards of evidence. It's just basically makes the case that skepticism is warranted more now more than ever, probably. And if you're not skeptical, if you're not questioning, if you're not withholding judgment, if you're automatically believing, then you're probably triggered. And that may have long-term deleterious effects if you believe in the psychosomatic effects of having very paranoid or angsty beliefs, like climate angst. Are you familiar with climate angst? Climate angst is afflicting mostly the youth, but here, Yale expert explains climate anxiety. Now, the thing about climate anxiety is that it's based on something that doesn't exist. 6 tips for coping with climate anxiety. Now, if climate anxiety keeps you up at night, here's how to cope. How are you beating climate anxiety? Now, I don't see anything like this for chemtrail believers, but the chemtrail believers are similarly triggered. Very angry, very mad, and they are believing, of course, that the sky is falling. Mental health clinicians are seeing more patients coming in with symptoms of climate change anxiety, eco-anxiety, climate doom. Yep. Several Yale researchers are at the forefront of studying the rising tide of climate anxiety. Now, this is an example of how terrorism actually affects people psychosomatically. These people are mentally ill now because of all the news. The news made them sick, like mind viruses. Ms. L says, I met a woman who had anxiety because of plastic bags. Well, pre-pandemic, here they had banned paper bags because it's bad for Gaia. So then we had to use plastic bags. And then they banned plastic bags because I think that one was because of Gaia. And then we're carrying our groceries unless you want to bring in your own bag. So if you brought your own bag in, you were fine. Otherwise, you're carrying your groceries up the street or to your car. Then COVID happened and they said, no, you can't bring in your own bags because those are infectious, so please use the plastic bags. And I'm thinking, wait, we're using plastic bags to save the planet and we're not using our own bags because that would be dangerous for us. So it seems like we all of a sudden we're prioritizing human survival over Gaia, which was a twist I did not foresee. And if you feel bad about using plastic straws or plastic bags, you can go to NBC Climate Confessionals and you can confess. And I love the paper straws that come in the plastic wrappers. Look, it's all virtue signaling anyway. And look, MK Ultra has been implemented globally. The MSM triggers people with memes, images, sounds, and it switches on these various programmed personalities. And we witnessed it before. It's really a matter of showing people images on a screen, which causes their internal worldview to update to include this new thing. That's why I compare it to the Hunger Games or Westworld, where you see the programmers around a table with a model of the Earth above it, where the people are, and the people exist in this model more than they exist in the real world. And this is an apt metaphor for how things work because they throw something into or onto the stage and then it becomes real for everybody. And that's what is actually happening every single day. All right, I'm scrolling through some things I earmarked on my Twitter. The Iran parliament building is a giant pyramid with 33 windows. Yes, and that's because it's a monolithic world order. There is no division. There's only one government. That's really the conspiracy. The conspiracy is that everything is not already under control, already under lockdown. That the new world order is coming. No, it's already here. They're just updating it. Illusion Warfare said, the reason I reposted this is to remind folks that the 13,000 most viewed online vids at the start of Ukraine conflict were all fake. You're going to see the same thing again with the Iran-Israel business. Yeah, it makes a good point here. On TikTok, 13,000 of the most viewed videos showing the war in Ukraine were using the same audio overlay gunfire. And I mentioned this before, that 10/7 happened right after the release of Modern Warfare 3 the night before. Modern Warfare 3, millions of people plugged into this thing. That's predictive programming. It's immersive, it's concurrent programming, and it puts things within the realm of possibility. So the realm of possibility, as I define it here, is what the people will believe. Like if they're ready to believe in aliens, then they can throw aliens onto the world stage. Just put it on a screen when the people are ready to believe in mass. When enough people will believe and they outnumber those who know, and that's what it's about. It's about believers versus knowers, fake versus real. But when it's time for aliens, they'll just, yep, they're real, and everyone will get the update. All right, let's continue going through my notes. We were talking about the Stabby event in Melbourne, World War Z. Then there was, this is a demon disease going around, actually. That might be interesting to look at here. Oh, let me get into the knowing metascript. So there's another movie I have to watch now. We probably have to watch it. We have to have a list of movies to watch. It's called Knowing, and I believe it came out in 2014. I'm going to find my notes on it. But the theme of the movie has to do with a time capsule. And the time capsule, here it is, 50 years of psyops in a time capsule. This is the one. The film's called Knowing. And here is the premise. 1959, Lexington, Massachusetts Elementary School celebrates its opening with a competition in which students draw what they believe will happen in the future. Now, one of the students writes a bunch of dates. Now, these things are put in a time capsule stored for 50 years. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So, fast forward 50 years. John discovers the numbers, dates, death tolls, and geographical coordinates of the major disasters over the past 50 years, including the Oklahoma City bombing, September 11th, Hurricane Katrina, and several others, are all in this time capsule. So this is all interesting. John becomes convinced his family has a significant role in the events. His wife died in one of the earlier events. Fascinating. So what is this suggestive of? To me, this is, again, this is Nicolas Cage, a Nicolas Cage movie, which is also somewhat telling. He was in the Humanity Bureau about humanity being locked down because of radioactive fallout that's not really there. I'll have to watch it out. Yeah, it came out in 2009. I'll have to watch this one again. I'll have to watch it. 2009, American science fiction thriller. I want to watch the Humanity Bureau again. That's what I was thinking. It met with mixed reviews, with praise for the acting performances, but criticisms over the implausibilities. I'm mostly interested in this premise here, though, that this time capsule had a record of these events that would happen over the next 50 years. Because there is such a time capsule, there has to be. You just have to go to the command center of the PSYOP entertainment complex where they are bending the news, just like newsbenders, where the new recruit is walked through the news studio and he's shown the future. Yeah, here's we're going to fake the moon landing in 5 years. Here's we're going to fake this. And he's just given a breakdown of what's to come. And subliminally, they show you 9/11. Dewis in Paris says the Humanity Bureau is pretty B grade, but the premise was interesting. Exactly, it was B grade. No doubt. But I watch these movies for their messaging. I'm not trying necessarily to find stuff to entertain me. Okay, moving on here. The last good Nicolas Cage movie I saw was called Renfield, which is about the vampire Dracula and his servant Renfield. But it's not really even about vampires. It's about the toxic relationship between the vampire and his servant, and how his servant has to break that toxic bond, and he goes to this meeting for uh, people with codependency. It's a comedy. Now, there's a ton of stuff I'm getting from people on the chemtrail front, and I'm trying to avoid talking about it live, but I'm working on it. In fact, there's a good chance that I'm probably going to release a lengthy ebook on the subject of the chemtrail versus climate change dialectic, and how I think these are belief systems or beliefs that are put into the left and the right fringes by design. Okay, here's another example of doomhopium. Breaking news from Benny Johnson. Benny Johnson is one of these right wing influencers. He was at the MMA event and he shook hands with Donald Trump. He interviewed the QAnon shaman and nodded and smiled through all of the nonsense the guy was spouting. So here's Benny Johnson, billions of followers, major influencer. He says, look, the Israeli government's doomsday plane is taken off. This is the only plane leaving Israel. It's carrying Netanyahu in the cabinet. This is very bad. Now, how did he know about it? These individuals act like sources. They are not sources. They regurgitate, they remix, they put it out there as engagement bait, but they don't have any information. So here's the added context. This is not a doomsday plane. It's Israel's version of Air Force One, and it's never been operationally used. If it's in the air, it's to minimize the risk of damage in the likelihood the airbase it's based out of is targeted. So in other words, this guy lies. But like all of these internet liars, he doesn't correct it. Why is that? All right, we have something here. More bridges. What was it? Trains, planes, bridges, barges. I have a couple things on that. Now let me read this comment because this is an ongoing discussion. We're talking about predictive programming and how pervasive it is and what it means that it is so common. I'm suggesting it's standard operating procedure and that it's advertising, it's repetition in marketing and propaganda to prepare us for the fake news. Others will say it's separate from the fake news and it represents the writers and artists being tied into some kind of vibe and they're getting the information from a higher source. But this higher source has not been identified. But if we're going to assert it's a higher source, then we may as well find out, which specific instances of predictive programming could only have been put there by God, because these would be equivalent to Mandela effects. These would be bona fide miracles. And I think it'd be interesting to do a deep dive into what can be considered miraculous and what could be considered, in the more mundane sense, just another one of man's tricks. And I think it's important to note that we're looking at a magic show on the world stage, stage magic. And when you go to a magic show, you never assume that the trick you don't know how he did, you never assume it was magic. Like, I don't know how he managed to pull that quarter out of that kid's ear. It must be magic. No, you assume it's sleight of hand, sleight of mind, somehow distracting you, but you don't run to the explanation of magic. Yet, when it comes to psyops and media and predictive programming, there is this tendency among truthers to ascribe some kind of magical quality to things like, well, I don't know how they faked it, therefore it was real. Or, I don't know how this is done, therefore higher power. And so this is the basis for this conversation. Now, here's what John LeBon said. The big question at the moment, how are these coincidences happening? Are a bunch of clever humans doing this intentionally? Or is there another explanation? I take a look at different angles. And Secret Morpheus had a comment here that I thought was worth repeating. He said, I don't have any hard proof and never would short of a confession, which would never happen. I suspect that references to psyops are deliberately put in at least some movies. The fact that no artists have ever openly talked about the sinks in their work is a tip-off to me. Now, that is kind of interesting that those whose work are most represented aren't talking about, hey, look, I'm reading the zeitgeist. My art is prophetic. Like they're not getting in front of it. And you think that they would as a way of promoting their work. But no, you really don't. You don't see a lot of it. You don't see directors digging deep into it. If they do, like I mentioned, the writer of the book Leave the World Behind, he mentioned how his book seemed to be predictive of 2020, but he said so with that duper's delight grin. Commenter says, any sufficiently developed extraterrestrial intelligence is indistinguishable from God. Right, a remix of Arthur C. Clarke's any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic. Now, he's not saying it's magic. He's saying it's indistinguishable from magic. Imagine what an iPhone would have looked like to someone 100 years ago with all of its capabilities. It would be magic. Diana South says the CIA directs Hollywood. I think that's fair. I mean, it's probably not the complete story, but that is a way to look at it. That the directors direct their movies, but the directors are also directed. And this refers mainly to the big productions that can be reasonably expected to be viewed by the collective psyche. There's independent films, there's small artists who aren't part of this, but they may often be regurgitating, sort of like how alt media regurgitates the mainstream and reinforce the dominant paradigm. I think a lot of artists and independent filmmakers who are just echoing what they're seeing as popular and also going off of their MSM frame of reference, they are basically reinforcing the Truman Show. But I wouldn't say that at that level they're going to be carrying predictive programming messaging. I mainly look for big studio productions, but specific directors who seem to be in the know. And I have a growing list of those I refer to as metascripters, those who wouldn't have any plausible deniability. And there are plenty who would obviously be well apprised of what their work is a part of. Oswaldo says, world stage directors being directed to direct a metascript. Yes. Yes, I think the idea here, when I'm saying that they write the news in advance and it's all programming, it's all part of a unified whole, if you find that hard to believe or even implausible, I would suggest look at the space program carefully. Every single second of every faked space event is storyboarded, rehearsed, they have directors, they have crew, and they're projecting into the future. It's not like what are we going to do today on the ISS? No, they have it scripted decades in advance. It's a long-term project. They can't just put us on Mars tomorrow. So the script writers are writing a script for the future. In 2030, we're going to report on Mars as such. So I think it's already safe to say they're writing our future in advance and not just in outer space. And so as long as you keep in mind that the same special effects or the same backstage applies to the fake news on the ground as above, then you can see how, yeah, there is a cohesive monolithic story being told here. Kay Gray says, I need a rewrite. Well, we have been treated to some interesting plot twists, and I have to give them credit for ingenuity, because the right wing didn't care about mass shootings, because the mass shooters were all right wingers. Like, this guy has a MAGA hat like Nick Cruz, he's a Nazi, we're just going to say it's mental illness. Not a big deal. So they didn't care. And the next tack was have the mass shooters shoot up country music concerts. Because country music, Second Amendment, this will get them. Didn't work. They didn't care. They're still stuck on the good guy with the gun will stop a bad guy with a gun. So then last year, they brought out a new killer. They replaced the bowl-cut right-wing Nazi with a left-wing Reddit radicalized trans shooter. And these ones have been kind of a staple of the last few, and they've targeted Christian schools specifically. So it ties into the moral pandemic and the idea that the left is satanic and against Christians. So they did this plot twist, and suddenly the right wing cared. Now you have Jack Posobiec, top tier right wing influencer, who's treating that Covenant school shooting like a right wing Sandy Hook, which is kind of funny. Not funny, but when you look at the scripting, the event, you look at the photography, it was essentially repeating a lot of the same shots from that previous event. But they care about Covenant, but they don't care about the other one. Why is that? It's because of the shooter. It's because of the scapegoat and who they get to blame. Elephant Tusk says this is such a sick world, hijacked a long, long, long time ago. That's one way to look at it. There's another possibility. Another possibility is that mankind is so terrible that if the majority of us aren't kept in check by mind control and religion, the whole thing wouldn't work. It would fall to pieces, chaos. Maybe to have order in the chaos, there has to be some heavy top-down mind control. I don't know. I'm not siding with the elite, but I'm just referencing some ancient take on this. The idea of religion being used to foment, to create by design uh, a type of population that are programmable. Here's the article I'm looking at on Wikipedia. Instrumentum regni, instrument of monarchy, a Latin phrase inspired by Tacitus, used to express the exploitation of religion by the state as a means of controlling the masses. Now, just replace religion with media. And so here's a statement from Polybius who says, "My opinion is that perhaps it would not have been necessary if it had been possible to form a state composed of wise men, but every multitude is fickle, full of lawless desires, unreasoned passion, and violent anger. The multitude must be held in by invisible terrors and pageantry. The ancients acted not rashly in introducing among people notions concerning gods and beliefs in the terrors of hell." He goes on to say that the modern world would be rash and foolish in banishing these beliefs. Now, this again is interesting considering that it's like a necessary evil, and maybe they didn't banish these beliefs. They brought us a new god of war that everybody's afraid of. They duck and cover when they see its image. It's the atom bomb. We have a angry storm god that will flood the world if we don't change our wicked ways, and that would be Gaia. We have all kinds of concepts that are rooted in ancient superstition used for mass mind control that have been reintroduced through mass media. But again, if this is true, then it raises a question, are we looking at a benevolent dictatorship? I look at the movie The Village as a model for what we're experiencing. And in that movie, you have a group of people who are put into this at birth. They're born into a commune in a wilderness away from the modern world. And the idea here was to keep them safe. The world was violent and wicked, so they gave them a perfect life, idyllic. However, it's only perfect and idyllic if they are in a state of ignorance about it, because the ones who figured out it was a ruse, that the adults were wearing monster costumes to terrorize everyone. And that was it. Another part of it. In order to maintain the fear of outside the village, the elders, and the name elders is really, I think, symbolically important here, the L and the elite, the elders would put on these devil costumes and prance in the woods to scare the villagers. Now, that's terrorism. That's what we're seeing every day. But they're doing it to maintain the cohesion of their little happy society. And those who figured out it's fake had to leave. But the question here is this a benevolent dictatorship using this kind of mind control to keep them safe? Dewis and Pear says, what if we are the bad guys, we are the demiurge, maybe the other god collectors quarantined us by splitting our consciousness into a billion pieces until we figure it out Tower of Babel style? Hmm. Now that's an interesting take. I mean, I have considered this, that perhaps we are in quarantine. I mentioned the tables in Westworld and the Hunger Games with the elite around them. That table, that circular table, could represent our perimeter. And we could very well be quarantined. And in the village, the villagers were a couple centuries behind technologically, completely detached from the world, culturally, in their own little bubble. And it could be the case that we are, for our own good, kept behind. In fact, I'm reading this book right now, and it kind of reminds me of Three Body Problem, at least the theme, Trial by Many Fires. I think that's the title of it, but it's about this idea of mankind being his own enemy when he gets too advanced because it brings in aliens who knock him off his pedestal. Through Fiery Trials, the Safehold series by David Weber. But the idea here is that we get too evolved, we become a danger to ourselves, and we get ourselves destroyed, and they have to start civilization over again. So the priesthood, the elite, decided we're going to keep man technologically in the Dark Ages, and they restrict their technological evolution. They restrict their use of technology so that they can never develop beyond a certain level, and they're given a fake backstory, and they're told that aliens are angels, etc. But the point of it is, they decided that for our own good, we had to be quarantined and kept at a very low level of awareness about the greater universe. Okay, let's see here. Kay Gray says, we were hijacked, unacceptable. Well, the village raises this question, though, of benevolent dictatorships, and is it really benevolent if, to maintain the cohesion, they have to terrorize everybody? If you remember, they were hiding in the basements during these, quote, drills, and they called them drills. And during the drills, the monsters would run around and bang on the doors, which is the exact same thing that happens in hyper-realistic school shooting drills. So I guess it's a question of, human nature, and is it such that we do need these types of um, contrivances to keep us in order, pageantry. All right, moving on. Now, one common thread with all this is fear. And that's one of the reasons why I've been really adamant about making a distinction between rational and irrational fears. And I put a poll on my Twitter account because, I think it's important to, call people out on things if they are claiming to believe something. For example, we're all being poisoned from something they're putting in the clouds. Well, how many years can you get away with warning people about this without taking any action before we should just question whether you really believe it? What are they afraid of? They'll say, I'm not afraid of the trails. Well, then you're afraid of taking action, or you're afraid of being proven wrong. So I put a poll on my Twitter account asking, what are chemtrail believers afraid of? Are they afraid of the trails themselves? Are they afraid of being wrong? Or are they afraid of perhaps taking action? And by action, I mean class action lawsuits. And so far we have 50% saying they fear the chemtrails, 30% say they fear being wrong. And I posted some images this morning. I went on a hike and I was photographing the sky. Beautiful or scary? Choose your own adventure. Which is it to you? You're looking up at the sky, you see these clouds. Is it beautiful? Is it scary? It's a matter of opinion. It's a matter of whether you put your internal concept, your fears, your phobias, these hyperstitious realities over what you're really seeing. And I'm curious about this because if something's objectively beautiful, can someone convince you that it's toxic and ugly? And if so, I would say it says something about the power of beliefs to shape our perceptions, and it reminds me of the cultural pessimism of the left, how everything is a carbon footprint. Everything takes a toll on Mother Earth. It really takes the fun out of things. Now you should feel guilty about everything. But imagine not being able to go outside and enjoy the fresh air, not being able to enjoy being outside anymore because you feel like everything is toxic and poison. It's like you might as well be locked down in your basement. You might as well wear a mask. Okay, continuing. You can follow me at IPS Insider, and we're also live on Twitter at IPS Think Tank. I'm going to find there's a video here of an individual who claims that he has seen demons. And it's kind of a new trend. And I don't believe these are authentic, but what you have is people are claiming that there's a new medical condition, which has been reported, where people see faces that look a little distorted. And some would say they look demonic. And there's an increasing number of people who are going around saying that they are seeing people's faces turn into demons. So here's one example. This is Mark Atwood.
Today, I experienced something that I've never experienced in my life before. Freaked me out. Thought I was crazy. Still haven't processed it fully. So, as I do every week, twice a week, I make deliveries to the same guy. I've been doing it for 7 months. And it's the same guy every time I walk in. He's got a big garage with like a couple trucks in it. I walk in, I hand him his parts, we talk for a minute, I walk away. I go on my business. Today, I walked in, and he had his back to me, and he was working on his bench, and he must have heard me coming. I don't know, because I was actually pretty quiet, I thought, but when he turned around...
Now, this guy sounds like an actor to me. This is a good build-up. He's not even close to being done. He's a third of the way through. He does a lot of hyperventilating.
I'm just not feeling very good, and I handed him his part, and I was like, hey, I gotta go. The reason I reacted that way is because when I looked at him, he was different. He didn't look like the same guy I saw every other time.
Okay, he's finally getting there. We're a minute and a half through. Thanks for your patience. But there's a lot of these going around. Just a heads up, a lot of people are seeing demons or they're pretending to for clicks on TikTok. And I don't think this is like monetizable content. I don't think they're getting money out of this or even that much. So I wonder, what is the motivation to put yourself out there, to tell some story about how you saw a chupacabra or whatever you're saying?
First thing I saw was he had no color in his eyes. They were completely black. Like black. Like you couldn't even see reflections. It was just a black mass. And for some reason, his ears were kind of weird, and they had like this little point.
Does anybody believe this? Or what's more likely? That he's doing this for the attention and the clicks? Because here he is on TikTok, stretching his ears out and hyperventilating, trying to build up dramatic tension, which he's done. I mean, I'm on the edge of my seat right now. What did you see? And what did he see? The older man that he delivers packages to was a demon.
Like that. I don't know what that was. Excuse me. But then I was talking to my friend, and he sent me an article about them saying that a new disorder that's coming out where people are starting to see demon faces.
Okay, now, what we're getting here, though, I think we're getting the truth. He got an article from his friend that people are seeing demon faces, but the question is, did he see the article before he saw the demon faces? Or did he see the demon face and then he saw the article? What do you all think? Thank you, Elephant Tusks. The IPS appreciates the support. He says, I'm super afraid of AI and chemtrails. Yes, well, I'm afraid of 5G towers igniting the chemtrails and igniting the atmosphere. Another doomsday scenario. I'm not afraid of AI. I am afraid of the public's blind faith in anything they see on a screen. So if we're told, oh yeah, this is AI, people will follow it. There's a song about that, a David Bowie song, 1969. It was The Savior Machine, about President Joe turning over control to the Savior Machine that cures war and hunger and all this. N.A. Literalist says Jake the A-hole is an archon. I've heard that before. Duas in Paris says Jake the Archon hole. I knew he was a portal to the Demiurge. Yes, that's why he hangs out here with me, the God Blocker. Alright, so this individual here, of course, is likely just fibbing for clicks. And there's a lot of people doing it. The veil has lifted, says Mary Rogers. Behold, the veil of the temple was torn. The earth shook and the rocks were split. Okay, well, that doesn't say anything about demon faces. What's going to happen on April 8th with a solar eclipse? Honey, 100 trillion cicadas are going to come out of the ground and create a hellstorm to cancel the mind control frequency, and we'll see the demon faces they've been talking about. The deep state is creating earthquakes to disrupt the cicadas. 100 trillion of them will disrupt the mind control frequency from the moon, revealing demons and reptilians. So earthquakes and demons and reptilians, as predicted by the Bible. And that's going to happen that's going to happen in negative 8 days.
April 8th. It's about to go down. Everyone's worried about this eclipse, and they're blasting fear porn of this face dysmorphia on all the news stations. But what if I told you the only reason they're doing this is because there's something that's going to come from the ground that is going to change the frequency of Earth?
So how many of you are feeling the new frequency? Anybody here on the new frequency? I don't know if I caught it. I don't know if I'm on it. Am I missing something here? I'm not seeing the demon faces. Jake the A-hole says, there's actually a guy who claims I'm a shape-shifting archon and he seems 100% serious, Aaron Haywood. Yeah, I think he is serious. Look, there is something that I noticed today. I was chatting with somebody who said that we're all in our own realities and it's all subjective and nothing is real. And if you go to any asylum, you'll find a lot of people who are immersed in their own subjective experience. However, their subjective experience has their internal concept of the world, which is full of delusion, has overcome their real world experience of it. In other words, their physicality has been overcome by their mental concept, which is no longer congruent. And they have to be locked in padded cells for their own safety. And that's because they are reality denialists, or they have shifted. And, I think it's interesting to look at the sun and the moon, alchemical symbolism. The sun is the solar, the light of consciousness and awareness, linear thinking, left brain. And then the moon is associated with the darkness of the subconscious, the part that is unreasoning, the part that is unknown. And you refer to somebody who has left the real world and immersed themselves in their own world as lunatics. And I think there's some real, I think, truth in this, that it has to do with the balance between the sides. And so when people say reality's fake, and I'm like, well, no, reality's real. Your internal concept has been messed with, but that doesn't mean that the reality itself is fake. That's going too far, and that's kind of a trap. And so I like to maintain the point here that we are looking at an attempt to subvert objective reality by working through our minds. They're not altering reality. They're altering our mental concepts of it. Belief does not create reality. If it did, climate change would be real. Everybody believes in it. If it did, moon landings would be real. Everybody believes in it. No, reality isn't altering to fit our beliefs. Our beliefs are being altered so that we can be controlled like a bunch of sheep. Pippi Longstruff says, taking a break from the break. Awesome. Thank you for joining us tonight. Jake the A-hole says, Aaron says I play the role of Nick Johnson, who's a YouTuber with 1 million subs. Oh yes, I used to get people calling me up and they'd be like, yeah, you're this guy and that guy. I'm like, I don't have time for that, but sure, give me credit. There's 3 of me. One of them said, there are 3 different IPSs. 3 different people play him. And they said it's because, and I remember who it was. It was this person on Twitter who goes by Xmas Eve Evil. Some guy named James who pretends to be some lady who is one of the top transvestigators, weirdly enough. And this person has suggested that I am a female and that there are 3 of me. So there's these 3 chicks playing me. And the reason why there are 3 is labor laws. They can't have one Illuminati slave doing all the work 24/7. So at least they're that compassionate. Now my point about and I'm not using the word crazy, but the purpose about people who are divorced from reality, the reason I brought this up is that we're looking at, I think, a global asylum in a sense, where there are no consequences for your beliefs not matching with reality to a large degree. Fascinating comments here. Lickety Split says, how many people fake internet battles for attention? Yeah, it is all about attention. You know, Grimes is at Coachella, and halfway through her set, she had some glitch. I think the AI got into her system and sped up the song. She couldn't line it up. She couldn't push the buttons right. So her whole DJ set flopped at Coachella. And I was looking through the comments, and this happened in Mexico recently. So I'm thinking the only way DJ Grimes, and Grimes, of course, the one of the wives of Musk, Grimes, and Baby Yucky, great names. So Grimey's DJ set fell apart, and I'm suggesting it was by design. That nobody cares about DJ Grimes, not even if she's at Coachella. But now that she had some big glitch and she had to get on the mic and apologize for 5 minutes, now everybody's talking about DJ Grimes. It's just marketing. That's what psyops are. It's all marketing. Joined by Salty Siren says delusions are encouraged. Absolutely. Absolutely. And delusions versus delusions never lead to any kind of higher understanding of things. It never results in anything other than more or less just back and forth mudslinging, left versus right. And it's very delusional when you get into some of the big things they argue about and the small things. But these delusions, I call them hyperstitions. Because even if it doesn't exist, if everybody acts like it does and it's reinforced in the media, it exists. That's why alien invasions are a likely possibility, not because they exist, but because people have been prepared to believe in it. There was a lot of predictive programming going into the moon landing, for example. There were books predicting everything we have as part of our science fiction paradigm was predicted by these prophetic science fiction writers. But was it predicted? No. They were conditioning us. Predictive programming is conditioning. And there's more predictive programming for our destiny in outer space through science fiction and everything else than for any other scenario for the future. Okay, let's see here. Pippi says, I couldn't find the question mark for a second. Oh, yeah, they're going to take the question marks off the keyboard soon. Well, they're either going to do that or they're just going to condition people to not ask questions, where it'll become superfluous. Like you won't even need a question mark anymore. All right, so we're talking about demon face or face dysmorphia, and this is going to happen last week. Last week, the world's going to end, and the cicadas are going to come out of the earth. They're going to disrupt the mind control moonbeams, and we're all going to see that the people in our lives around us, you know, the ones who you thought were merely narcissists, were actually demons.
The solar eclipse is going to activate as many as 100 trillion cicadas to come out from the ground. And I don't know about you, but have you ever heard a cicada?
Okay, now, cicada, potato, and they do make a noise. I record them every year. It does sound alien. It does sound really kind of creepy sometimes. But yes, there are two broods of cicadas. They're going to be coming out of the ground at the same time. I don't even think they're overlapping. Ground zero is going to be somewhere in Chicago. Now, one point about these is the end of the movie I alluded to earlier, Three Body Problem, has a scene with cicadas. And it's Netflix, so there's something to it. Jake the A-hole says, I'm still waiting for those bugs to show up by the zillions. Yeah, it's going to start last week. It's going to start with the eclipse. And along with that, the tribulation and everything else. So just be patient. It's happening last week. And all these prophets who are predicting the doomsday are still here. They're just adjusting their dates. Somebody noticed that the guy who saw demon faces flashed the 666 on his eyeball. So he's been discredited. He's actually an Illuminati crisis actor. He's probably a demon face himself. Like if you saw him in real life, if you saw him in person, you would probably see his real face, but the camera doesn't pick it up. You know what I always thought was absurd about David Icke's theory on reptilians is that people would see reptilians on TV. Yeah, I'm watching Bill Clinton on TV and he turned into a reptilian. And I'm like, I don't know. Everybody would have seen it. And I don't know if you could see through their hologram that's fooled the camera. I mean, that kind of thing. Skyfish says, thanks for being on tonight, Tim. Always appreciate your perspectives. Yes, the off-world stage perspective. The true overview effect. Or the overjaw effect, as we call it here. The astronauts go so high above the Earth that their jaws drop when they see the Earth. It's so beautiful. It's all one. No nations, no boundaries. Let's all embrace the one world order, kumbaya. They all have that experience, and they call it the overview effect. They say it's a cognitive upgrade. They level up. The elevated priesthood. They have seen the world from God's perspective. And guess what? Well, America, you're polluting too much, and you're going to have to change. That's their message, and they call it the overview effect. And they've talked about creating the overview effect for children using sensory deprivation tanks and AVR, virtual reality and stuff. Sensory deprivation, some kind of baptism into this space age cult. But it's fake. They don't have the overview effect. They're faking it. Their jaws are dropping, they're acting ecstatic, looking down at the earth. It's all an act. But when I talk about the overview effect from the off-world stage, we literally have it. We have the perspective of those who recognize that the worldview is a false model. Most don't even know it's a model. That's why they can't see outside of it. That's why they can't question it. Someone said, oh yeah, Mike Kim, he said I have a crush. Oh, I muted that account. Let me unmute it. He said I have a crush on Naomi Wolf, and I don't. The reason why I'm constantly, every day I go to Naomi Wolf, who's always crying wolf about cirrus clouds. She's like, look what's happening with these flight emissions. I'm documenting it. It's going to block the sunlight. Why can't political campaigns clean up the skies? What is causing this? Again, argument from playing dumb. Appeal to ignorance. She's being dishonest. These are not good faith questions. What is causing this? That's not a good question. The answer is well understood. It's predictable. It's a very well documented phenomenon. There is no question here. The fact that Dr. Naomi Wolf is playing ignorance means that she is a propagandist targeting the right wing with fear porn. This is just like Greta. But every day I go on to her channel because I look at this, I'm like, that is such a beautiful sky. Look at those cirrus clouds, ice. I see nothing wrong with this, but she does. So she can't go outside. And I said, you're smarter than this, which makes you cruel. And it does make her cruel because she is deliberately targeting the ignorant. The appeal to ignorance targets those who don't know and misinforms them, telling them it's not known. Hey, those of you who don't know what those things are, yeah, it's not known. Nobody knows. It's a mystery. What could it be? That's lying. So I called her cruel. So again, I am not crushing on Naomi Wolf. As evidence, as you can see, I muted the account. Like I realized I've already called her out 50 times, no need to do it again. But the reason why I'm doing it is I'm deliberately targeting influencers promulgating this psyop. I'm not trying to change her mind, but I'm exposing to our listeners the infrastructure of the world stage psyop theater and how they use these mind flu, influenza, mind influencers to spread these mind viruses. And that's what she's doing. She is there to hold up part of the big infrastructure, like Greta and Al Gore. These characters are all there for a reason. They want you to be agoraphobic so you don't leave the house. And she's agoraphobic, and I'm algoraphobic. I reject the entire premise. NA Literalist says she's hot. Mike Kim says she be cute though. I heard a rumor, or I saw some conspiracy that Dr. Naomi Wolf is none other than, and I don't believe this, I'm just pointing out that I didn't start this, that Naomi Wolf is, who is Bill Clinton's girlfriend? The one with the gross stories about cigars, Monica Lewinsky. Yeah, there's a rumor, and I don't believe this is the case at all, that Monica Lewinsky is Naomi Wolf. And have you seen the two side by side? And I'm like, you know what? Honestly, it could be kind of close. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this on the fly because pictures, you need to see video, you need to hear the voices. But anybody here look into this one? Could Naomi Wolf be Monica Lewinsky with a little surgery, hair dye? Ms. L says Monica. Dewis says Trutherville is essentially a mini Borg that the Maxi Borg can more easily assimilate. Resistance is futile. Yes, resistance is compliance. I put that in the pamphlet anti-anti. Resistance is compliance. And by that I mean if you take the anti position, you are therefore part of the info war itself. You're not a conscientious objector. Commenter says Monica is okay. Now you're just body shaming. I haven't seen them. I haven't compared them. Look, I would also say fake until proven real with any claim, especially claims coming from truthers. And do the two of them being the same person in any way, let's say it is true. Would it change anything? No, it wouldn't. Now, Nicole Simpson being Megyn Kelly, yeah, obviously we all know that's true. She's spending way too much time trying to debunk it. And look, I'll just say, let's say I was able to get into a dialogue with Megyn Kelly on Twitter. I would say, hey, look, we know you're Nicole Simpson, and we don't care. It doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. It's irrelevant if you haven't noticed, and you helped make it irrelevant. The people who damaged the collective psyche the most have nothing to fear from people finding out the truth because there isn't any sort of cohesive agreement on what reality is. So it doesn't matter. 777 says Naomi and Monica are almost anagrams, aren't they? And well, almost. Aside from the C. But almost is good enough. There was some gematria calculator guy who predicted that O.J. Simpson would die soon, and he predicted it would definitely be on a 412. Now, he died on a 410, but it's close enough. Have you noticed that, and I've seen these brought out again, that the prophecies of Nostradamus never expire? Like they didn't just end. Like, oh, none of them came true. We can get rid of this. No, they can always repurpose them for the present day. And this tells you something. Israel-Iran conflict. What did Nostradamus predict for 2024? Nedison's back with Nostradamus prophecy. Nostradamus predictions for 2024. Now, the fallacy at work here is the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. I brought this up with regard to The Simpsons, that you say enough and then you give some wriggle room, like in his case, different translations, multiple gematria calculators. If you have a little room or a million episodes of The Simpsons, you can predict the future. And it's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. It works like this. This Texan shoots a bunch of rounds into the side of a barn, and then he draws a target around the tightest cluster. And he's like, look, I shot 5 bullseyes. Well, no, you didn't. You missed 95 out of 100 shots, but you concentrated on those 5. And if you have a broad base of material to draw from, you can make anything fit. If you have wiggle room, like extra calculators or different calendars or different translations. Okay, we talked about Knowing, which I'll have to watch, a movie that hints at 50 years of predictive programming. I'm going to watch Civil War tomorrow, and I'll do a review of that as well. The movie Leave the World Behind pointed a lot of attention to Elon Musk, to his Tesla Roadsters. They were a feature in the film, and then later they were recalled in real life, just like the movie. Well, there's something going on here with the Cybertrucks, which came out of the movie Blade Runner. Blade Runner, November 2019, Los Angeles, and then, of course, they had the Cybertruck. Well, the Cybertruck comes out November 2019 in Los Angeles. Well, interestingly here, we're looking at an individual who is driving in a Cybertruck, and the metal sheath on his gas pedal slid off, and it got jammed beneath the steering wheel console there, and so now he couldn't take his foot off the pedal in his Cybertruck. So this wasn't the AI, this isn't some kind of computer malfunction, but rather the sheath slipped off the gas pedal and it got jammed in there. And
let me see if I can get a good view here. I'm driving and this goes here. As I'm driving, this slid up and wedged itself just like that. Right now it's not clipped on, so it's kind of hard to see, but this wedged itself right there. And as you can see, based on the design of the floorboard, this sliding up, and the way this was still hooked onto the pedal, it held the accelerator down 100% at full throttle. Now, I was luckily had a clear mind, didn't panic, and holding the brake down overrides the pedal.
okay, so if you got that, I don't know if this is a problem on all the vehicles, but I'm just looking at this with disbelief. I mean, this thing looks like it was just snapped together kind of haphazardly. All right, continuing. We talked about the Westfield massacre, how 3 of the victims were connected to prominent MSM and sports figureheads. That's, again, interesting as far as coincidences go. Despite the malicious ill will of truthers, Klaus Schwab isn't in the hospital, but many believe that he's dead and that he's being replaced by a clone, so nobody will know he's dead, because that makes a lot of sense. Just more QAnon sense. We can always move the goalposts. Again, air traffic in and out of DC is active and flights are moving along normally, despite what a lot of these Twitter posters are saying. Listen to this guy. This is doom hope. He's driving, and look, people are driving while they're dooming. That's dangerous. You shouldn't drive and doom. There's one of these individuals, his name was like Matt Walsh or something. He's speeding down the freeway with his 2 babies in car seats in the back. And he's not watching the road. He's making eye contact with me on TikTok. He's looking at us. And he's like, the world's going to end. There's going to be a war. Go to the link below and enter code Mike and buy some storable food items for the apocalypse. But he's doing it while driving with his kids in the car, as though he's leaving the world behind. He's driving to the hills. He's going to his bunker. And it was for drama. But it was dangerous, I'm saying. It was dangerous. I don't believe that he was really scared for his life. But I think that his babies are props, and he is trying to make money online by tapping into the fear porn, just like what the mainstream media does 24/7. But listen to Matthew Rife, again, hyping up the idea that we're at war.
I want you guys to look here in DC. We're right next to the Reagan Airport. Where's all the planes in DC at? I was going to be going to Florida Monday, but they have canceled majority of flights. Like, there's not a plane in the sky. There's one jet that's going around, and he's tilted so far up, you can tell that he's just scanning things. This is trippy.
This is scary. Readers added context from flightaware.com. Nothing is going on. Everything is normal. It's not scary. But it's scary if you inhabit the nightmare worldview of the Trutherville community. They're terrified because they're in a village. And Alex Jones dresses up as the devil and runs around the village at night to keep everybody scared and inside. Doom driving. Yeah, watch out, Richie. Richie from Boston is one of these. Well, Richie pulls over before he dooms, usually. Although sometimes he has done some driving and dooming. But he wears shades, so I can't see where his eyes are looking. I mean, you can doom and drive. I just want you to keep your eyes on the road. You can talk on the phone while driving if it's speakerphone. But there's no reason why you need to be staring at the camera lens. You need to watch the road, especially if your babies are in the back seat. Anyway, that was a scary take, wasn't it? A DEFCON warning system is evaluating the ongoing situation between Iran and Israel. The public is urged to take necessary precautions as the conflict grows in intensity, as Iran is expected to have some form of nuclear devices. Well, it turns out that DEFCON warning system has a blue check, but despite the blue check, they don't have any inside information or link to any government agency. This is scaremongering for profit. And it's what the mainstream does. You have alternative scaremongering and mainstream scaremongering. Lickety Split says engagement is the new currency. Yeah, Tom Crosscavage here said, I'm going to start unfollowing people who say, what do you notice? And I agreed with this, and I unfollowed the person he's referring to. Look, this post is from an account you blocked. I blocked Matt Wallace. Matt Wallace is the one driving with his kids. So he posts this clip of Lana Del Rey at Coachella pole dancing, and he says, what do you notice about Lana Del Rey's performance? So I spend 16 seconds of my life watching her twirling around, and I don't know what anybody's talking about. So I scroll down, nobody knows what he's talking about. Conrad says, yes, this is the cancer of this platform. Raised said, here's what I noticed. I noticed that you're farming engagement numbers. That and asking ridiculous questions. It's just to make them money. This Matt Wallace tries to create conspiracy theories where there are none. This is so irritating. Nobody here was able to figure out what she was doing that we were supposed to notice. Nothing. Like what are you drawing our attention to? So I blocked him. Instant block. I'm blocking a lot of channels these days because I'm going into quarantine. Kind of like the Kardashians did in 2020. They said there's too many conspiracy theories on the internet. We're going to freeze our social media. Well, in a way, I'm not disengaging, but I am certainly making it a point to quarantine from these propagandists and spam bots in alt media. I'm treating alt media the same way I treat mainstream media. It's the same mind control operation. You should be anti-anti. Don't just be anti because the pros are there. You need to be anti-pro and anti-anti. Truthers are just anti. They don't go far enough. They're not anti enough. If you want to read anti-anti, you can go to Patreon or my other blog, IPS.monster. I'll make sure I send it there as well. And it's just like a 20-page or so, a 20-page ebook explaining the premise here of why we need to not be comfortable following the knee-jerk reactionary alt media narratives. Lean Dion says Dom Luker is one of the worst. Yeah, when the thing about the tunnels, the Jewish tunnels came out, he went out to New York and he ran through some tunnels and he photographed graffiti and he claimed that these mattresses that were really dirty is where pedos were abusing kids. Like he just made up this whole story. But it doesn't matter if it's true or not with these individuals. Okay, let's continue. Nick Fuentes looks more and more like Hitler. Such a clown show. We'll avoid that for now. Queen Diddlu, or Queen Ramona, Diddlu Ramona, the QAnon queen, is at it again. We may go into that. I just had really bad Q fatigue, and I'm trying not to give it any oxygen. But sometimes certain things rise up. Like right now, med beds are being talked about everywhere. They're recycling all of the stuff from like 2015, 2016. Dewis in Paris says, Fuentes makes me want to convert to Judaism. Yes, look, Nick Fuentes, Ollie Alexander, all these characters don't believe what they say. You see, they're trying to embrace or create this notion of Christian nationalism, but they don't have any sort of grasp on Christianity because they're basically for racial purity and fascism and this stuff. So in order to look like Christians, they are trying to act like they're morally outraged every other day. And it's like these individuals are not morally outraged. They're associated with Ollie Alexander, and then you get people like Milo Yiannopoulos. Like it's really a bunch of compromised, blackmailed, decadent hedonists who are all high on who knows what kind of drugs. Remember, was it Elijah Schaffer? I mean, I've been going through the rumor mill, and Elijah Schaffer was the individual who was there at Kenosha when Kyle did his little performance art piece. And, he's a regular with Tucker Carlson and all these. Everybody knows who Elijah Schaffer is on the right. Well, things have come out about him. And it's like, okay, these people are misrepresenting themselves, but of course the dupes on the right don't care. I mean, look, they're oblivious to like tomorrow Donald Trump's going to be on trial for this whole Stormy Daniels thing, but they're oblivious to 91 felony charges. Like they don't even care. They think he's Jesus. All right, let's see. The right-wing media apocalypse. This should get interesting. I'll go into this later. I wanted to stick on topic. We were talking about the stabbing psyop. Nothing to see there. World War Z, Demon Face, The Knowing. I'll have to watch that movie. I'm going to check out Civil War tomorrow. And tomorrow I'm going to be live taking phone calls, and we'll have Jurassic Liars jump on here for a little bit. Michael Letts says, most of the stage shooting and major events have occurred during the third week of April. Columbine, Virginia Tech. Hey, Virginia Tech. Anybody remember how many people the shooter from Virginia Tech shot in the head? How many victims? Now, I remember when that shooting was happening, Alex Jones said, look, the police are standing down. They're not going in. They're allowing it to happen. We heard that with Uvalde. We heard that with pretty much every single event. They're always saying, Littleton too, oh, the police are standing down. It's a black op. They're letting it happen. Austin 108 says, was it 33? How did you know? Must be a coincidence. A Virginia Tech shooting leaves 33 dead. The deadliest shooting rampage in the United States. Now, how did you know? If you didn't know of the story, you didn't know the body count, like how do you know the death toll of an event that happened like probably more than 10 years ago? When did this even happen? 2007. You know because there's a pattern and you're recognizing patterns. You're not a conspiracy theorist, you're a noticer. We have one that can see. Yeah, 33,000 dead Palestinians. I saw that one. This P. Diddy stuff is getting deeper. In fact, there's much more weird stuff around P. Diddy than there was around Epstein. Like, this is way bigger than Epstein in terms of its strangeness. I hardly want to describe it, But there's an old clip from Nickelodeon where these two children, are trying to wake up their friend who won't wake up. And he's covered with some kind of, just say white paint. So they go ask, what would P. Diddy do? And they go to P. Diddy and they ask him, how would you wake up our friend?
Let's ask him. Oh, okay. P. Diddy,
What's up?
we can't wake up Shane.
You try symbols?
Yep.
So they're asking P. Diddy how to wake up their friend. He gives them a remote control helicopter. And he says, put this in his pants.
Put it down his pants.
All right, we'll do.
Put it down his pants. So they go put a helicopter, a toy helicopter, into this kid's pants. And this is on Nickelodeon. This is beyond disturbing, to be honest. It's kind of gross. It's very gross. Now, they say, how is this going to work? And he turns on the helicopter.
He's still asleep.
Try this.
So the joke here, of course, is the remote control helicopter goes off in the kid's pants. And he wakes up screaming. Now, this is just one example of one of these strange... These clips are just surfacing. Diddy doing things that seem a little strange in retrospect. NA Literalist says, how do you wake up your friends and family? You don't. There's no reason. I mean, look, if they're MSM programmed, you can't wake them up. If they determine or they feel like something's wrong, they're going to go woke or to Trutherville, depending on their political predilections, but you can't wake people up. I think it's, I mean, maybe you can, possibly, but I think it's a waste of time. There's not a lot of time left. They're closing up the gaps, the cracks in the matrix. They're cleaning up the mess that we've made. They're kind of purging Trutherville of any real truth. And so it kind of seems like at this point, it would be a waste of time to try to reach out to the sleepers. The best option we have right now is to consolidate our time, resources, and energy and focus on those who've already stepped outside of the box to a large degree. Lickety Split says, why does anybody want to wake up anybody else? It's programming. You see, you've got on the left, they're programmed to want to wake up the normies to become woke. On the right, they want to wake up the normies to make them, I guess, truthers. But both sides are proselytizing, thinking they're doing good. But no, both sides are actually spreading the fear. They are the mind virus super spreaders that are responsible for all of these various beliefs. And they pitch it in various ways, but they are converting people into their fear-based religious paradigms. And so this desire to wake people up is actually misguided. Useful idiots or stooges. That's what you would refer to those who are marching on the streets, thinking they're fighting for social change, but they're just puppets, and they're there to get pepper sprayed and take the hits. Infinite Plane Radio.
Tim, Dominic, how's it going?
Oh, hey, Dominic, you're the targeted individual being gang stalked. Is that correct?
Right now, currently, bro.
Well,
Yeah, I'm at the bar. I'm at the grill and bar right now. I've been watching the cops go by. Even like as they were watching somebody, there's cops down the street that were lined up earlier. Now, when I leave this bar, this grill and bar, they're going to start fucking gang stalking me. But I got a new route. Okay, so basically, I'm going to go towards this police station and then go down that street, make a right, and then I go through the tunnel that goes under the tracks, and then I make a sharp right through a field, and that goes along the train tracks, and then I get back on the train tracks, and then I'm 1.5 blocks from the train tracks, and even 3 times they have, as soon as I hit my block when I get home, this has been going on for a month, there'll be a swarm of them coming out of the fucking woodwork like fucking ants. So at 12:30 in the morning.
I really hope none of them are listening, because they're going to follow you through the tunnel, over the tracks, and they're going to meet you wherever you're going. You just telegraphed your location. Now,
Right. So I'm being stupid, but how can they listen? Because they can program some code in. They can get through in my phone and fucking reprogram it for them to listen back.
No, it's because I'm also a targeted individual. And so if they're following me and they're following you, they're gonna make some connections. So
Oh, you just fucking.
look,
All right.
be on the
Now you are being interrupted. I'm hearing you in glitches.
well, just be on the lookout.
We're talking fucking phone to phone.
Take the
All right,
sewer,
go ahead.
take the sewers home. The thing
Yeah.
I'd be on the
Take the
lookout.
sewers home. All right.
Be on the.
Yeah, I was gonna ask for advice, but I gotta talk to you like Skype or something.
I would say keep an eye out for Scientologists to be following you next. I mean,
Oh wow.
I mean,
So what am I supposed to do, bro?
if you're a targeted individual, I don't know what you do, but document it. That's what most of them do. You start a TikTok channel. You can get a pretty big following and draw attention to the phenomenon. Although,
Okay.
although there are some perspectives that would suggest that it's cognitive bias and you're not really being followed. So I would be
Well,
very.
that's bullshit because I can see the same cars over and over and over. Plus, they're on my block. Plus, I was okay. So I got a message through Facebook that was from Michael McCollum, who is an ex-brother-in-law of mine. Okay, he couldn't make it as a biker, so he became a snitch, and then he wrote books during the COVID or some bullshit. Now he's a film producer and he owns Dark Horse Films LLC. And he sent me a message telling me through Facebook the end of last year that he's shooting the movie. I'm shooting a movie about you. Some shit like I'm shooting a movie about you and it starts right now. The movie about me. What the
What?
fuck are you talking
Okay,
about?
this is intriguing. So, why? Someone's asking in the comments too. People want to know why do you believe you are being targeted?
I don't know why. That's what I don't have no fucking clue. I have no clue. Maybe I know the truth of shit. I have no idea. I think it's who I was married to. They're a bunch of psychopaths. I was married to a psychopath, and the guy that I think is stalking me is a psychopath. While I'm watching a fucking possum right now graze through a parkway of grass.
Okay, now look, if you're legitimately in the belief that you're being stalked
I'm
this way,
legitimate, bro. I'm
okay,
super
then look,
legitimate. I'm being stalked right now, man.
then you should
I
know
see the same
that
thing.
it's illegal. Like this is criminal. If you're being stalked, it's criminal, and this is like, but
But who do I don't even know. If it's Michael McCollum, then I gotta what? Go to the police station and tell him I think it's him?
well, the thing is when
Because
you
I
say,
don't even have proof anymore.
yeah,
I don't even have proof of this message. It's all deleted. I even blocked him. There's not even a. That was a race. Me blocking him. Here comes the possum, getting closer to me, crossing the street. A baby possum. Oh my God. Going under the red sports car. That's cool. I'm watching a possum.
now,
cross the
but look,
street
look,
right
the term targeted individual seems to be a term associated with extreme paranoia. It's like an instantly discrediting thing to
I
say.
don't have no paranoia. This shit's creating a little paranoia, but I'm too strong and too brave for this shit, man. All
Well,
right.
I'm just suggesting here that the term.
I'm not seeing this. I'm not. There's no projections here. So.
Well, I'm interested in the
Okay.
phenomenon, but I would need
Let
some
me go back.
evidence.
Let me
Give
go
me some
back. Okay. So
pictures.
after. Okay.
Take
So
pictures.
after.
Take video.
Bro. So. Yes, I have been doing that. Of course, I've been counter stalking because I heard you say it. And so I continued with it because someone else even told me that. And I was my first thought originally, counter stalk them, take the pictures of their license plates and all this. So I'm doing that. And I got film. A lot of shit. Okay, so we're going back to the comment that my ex-brother-in-law that couldn't make it as a biker became a snitch and had some stupid filming production movie thing. It's called Dark Horse Films LLC, okay? And his psychopathic sister, Chrissy,
is his agent. No, I think it's them that are stalking me. Okay? It's them. All right? Now, I left a bar, I don't know, a few months ago after he first originally told me he's starting this film about me. I think a couple months later, I got swarmed as I'm going through a side street late at night. I don't know, 11, 12, whatever it was. 50 fucking cars out of a side street that you may see not even one car an hour. 50 cars swarming me. Now we're dating going forward a few more months to a month ago. It happened again, and then it happened to where again, for the third time, but I was going down a busy street, and there was private fucking detectives, all right? There, the night before, I'm seeing Chicago Ridge cops going this way, and Worth cops, Chicago Ridge cops in Worth, and Worth cops in Chicago Ridge. So they all are in on it. So I don't know what the fuck that's all about.
No, we don't have any
Maybe
answers. We don't have any answers as to why you'd be targeted, but it seems like if this is real, then
And they're now the bar that I'm at. They keep circling. They were circling left and right, up and down the fucking busy
but
street.
are you suggesting
Up
that
and
they
down.
they want you to know you're being followed? That seems to be part of this,
Yes,
right?
no, they made that immediate. I remember you stating that, and I already knew that, and you said it. It's like, yes, they make it known. All right, and 2 or 3 days ago, when I came back from being stalked before I got my new path, there was one asshole with his headlights on. It's 12:30 or 1:30 in the morning. He's got his headlights on. He's parked at my street. As soon as I went past him real slowly. I don't think I gestured to him because I usually gesture bad shit or I'm shouting.
Okay, well,
All
look,
right.
we are all
But
being, we're
as
all
soon as
being
I went to
monitored.
my backyard, that fucker took off. All right.
So
And so they're
look,
watching me, bro.
look, listen.
They're fucking watching me, man.
Every person listening, we are all being monitored 24/7 passively. But what he's describing, what the caller is describing, is a more active monitoring process where you're meant to know, and it's part of an intimidation tactic. And
Yeah, it's intimidation,
now
and I'm not scared.
this is a thing that is done tactically. Scientology has been pointed out as using this tactic.
Bro,
But as far
and
as
they radio in, and I watch these cars. They have screens, and they're like, all right, if you're driving, you got your phone, like, you put your phone in that thing. They have fucking computers, all right, not phones. Some of them got phones, some of them got computers, all right, that are following me, like computers following me.
fascinating. Now, I don't know what the point of this could be. It could be a number of things. Perhaps they're inventing a category, to convince the public that all conspiracy theorists are just paranoid. So it could be some kind of operation.
I'm not paranoid one bit, bro. I'm brave as fuck. That's
Well,
all I gotta say.
but from the perspective of
For
Normieville,
their perspective, they're trying to falsify it. Yes, I get it.
yeah, exactly. Interesting. Well, look, I hope that this doesn't bother you and keep you up at night and cause you to lose sleep. And giving you the benefit of the
No, it
doubt that it's
doesn't.
real.
Though it makes me stay up later than I should. I used to be an early bird. I'm not a fucking early bird no more. These cocksuckers took away my
Okay,
early
okay,
bird.
okay, okay. Look, anyway, hey, look, I wish you the best with this. I hope
I'm
that you're.
sorry.
No, look, wear a GoPro on your head and catch the gang stalkers in the act, and we will build on this because if
Yes.
if this is a real
Thank you. I
phenomenon,
will keep
that
filming.
you're not the only one. So, yeah, hey, thanks for calling,
Yeah, I
Dominic.
know that. I know that for sure. I know I'm not the only one.
Awesome. And hey, yeah, feel free to call back anytime and give us any updates. Thanks for the call.
Thank you, Tim. Goodbye.
All right. And 777 says that's literally paranoia. No, it's only paranoia if it's not happening in reality. And giving the caller the benefit of the doubt, it wouldn't be paranoia, but the tactic being employed seems to be one of intimidation. If it's going on in this way, and I'm speaking as someone who has been gang stalked by Freemasons and Scientologists. And I know how that may sound. I'm fully aware. And this is how you can know that I am not insane. the definition of, or rather, one of the typical things that characterizes someone who is lost touch with reality is they lack the insight. They lack an understanding of how other people hear their claims as crazy. And so I'm very well aware of what the normie hears when I say I was gang stalked by Scientologists and Freemasons. But that doesn't change the facts of it. And I can go into the details, how it happened, and how it comports with other people's accounts of the same thing. But it's a very well documented phenomenon, and it's really just a matter of looking into the history of the church and their employment of private detectives to stalk people who they consider to be a threat to their organization. Yeah, exactly. Dr. Tim says, go wear a GoPro on your head and come back and see me in a week. Kay Gray says, Freemasonry is going into a lake of fire unless they repent. Fact. Yeah, well, full disclosure here, I was in the military surrounded by Freemasons, and I was really fascinated by the whole thing. And I was also looking concurrently into Thelema, Kabbalah. I was into all kinds of areas of research, spirituality, etc. Uh, I was interested in, comparative mythology, syncretism, and the different religious, the fundamentals of shamanism, magical philosophies. It really was something that I was focused on in my off time when I was in the service. But afterward, I decided to join the Masonic Lodge, and I got a couple of my superiors from the military to sign me in as, because you have to have two people recommending you. And they were both Prince Hall, but they signed on me anyway. And so with these recommendations, I joined the Masonic fraternity, and I was in it for a little bit of time. I went all the way up through the three degrees in like 6 months or something, about a year. And then I went and I did Scottish Rite, and then I met a former potentate of the shrine who signed me in to join the Shriners. And that's when I stopped for a few reasons. But gang stalking, cultish activity was a big part of why I decided to break away from it. In fact, the Thelemic group, though, was also very culty. But part of the control, now this is where gang stalking comes into it. When I was being interviewed to join the Thelemic group, there was a series of 3 meetings prior to being brought into their main hub of activity, their temple. And the way it worked was I had to meet somebody at a restaurant, and over coffee we talked, and this person gave me a copy. She was called my link, and she said, you need to read this: Way of the Spiritual Warrior, Seth Speaks, Jane Roberts Channeled Information, Isis Unveiled. The collection of books they gave me were all meant to kind of make sure I was the right kind of person for this group, and I had already read these books. So they agreed that I would meet them again, and the second time we talked, I met a few other members of this group, and they explained to me their theory about aeons. And they said that we are entering the aeon of Horus. The aeon of the hanged, dying sun god Osiris is ending, and we're bringing about this new age. And this new age is one in which the old gods are destroyed. The new god is going to be the androgen Horus. So this is all explained to me, and it's done in a public location. So we're in a restaurant. There's a lot of people there, but I'm only conversing with a small group. Well, later, I have an initiation date as a candidate, and I meet at a post office at the edge of town, and then a white van comes in to the parking lot, and I go in. There's a few other individuals in there, no windows. They're listening to like Dead Can Dance on the radio. So I don't know where we're going. We go into their, it's up in the mountains, but I'm not able to actually, get the directions. I'm purposefully kept disoriented. And then from the van, the garage, you go up the stairs in the attic. Anyway, you go through this whole ceremony. My point of it is, at the actual ceremony, everyone's dressed up like characters out of Egyptian mythology, gods and stuff. And it was very similar to the Masonic initiation, almost like a template, but one is Judeo-Christian, the other is Egyptian. Now, afterward, we're having this dinner meeting, and I'm looking at a lot of the people around me, and I realized that when I was at the restaurant being interviewed, and I thought it was just me and 2 others, and then a room full of strangers, no, the people in the restaurant, many of them were part of the cult. So, in other words, it was kind of conveyed to me that you would never know if you were surrounded by people who knew who you are and who are a part of it. And it kind of made sense when they were describing the hand signs and the different ways of recognizing people on the quote astral plane, because that's all just metaphor for how to recognize people in the real world who are part of your cult. But it demonstrated the power, I think, of the intimidation of the mob, the group, where there were eyes and ears everywhere and you didn't even know you were being watched. So that was, I think it was kind of a subliminal or a subtle hint about something. And one of the reasons I left them, of course, was the cultiness of it. I could get into that later, but the main point of it is the group is able to function as a superorganism, and any member who is errant or breaking the rules would be likely to be caught. I mean, they create a net around you. Everybody spies on everybody. Everybody's essentially gang stalking everybody. It is a typical feature of cults to behave in this way, and those who are straying are a threat to the integrity of the group. So it was the cultishness of it that became so overbearing that I left. And I experienced this multiple times. I experienced cultishness trying to leave groups several times in my life. Leaving the army was like leaving a cult. Leaving, or not leaving, but being a part of these groups it creates this other dynamic. And I had a few times been convinced that there was evidences of tampering, for example. Like I was going to, maybe I'll do this on a separate podcast. We'll talk about the gang stalking. We talked about this before, but Dominic's here. He says, I'll be leaving my location soon and writing my new route. Yep, notify your buddies. Okay, but look, I'm very interested in cult dynamics. That's the reason why I got into Scientology. I didn't get into Scientology. Dianetics is a fascinating read and worth reading, I think. But at the time that I was looking into all these different groups, I was actually legitimately seeking knowledge. And this stuff wasn't all just on the internet so easily accessible. So I was doing research, doing my own research, spending time trying to get information from the sources without relying on secondhand filtration by paranoid people with agendas. So I'm doing gonzo journalism, you could say. Now, the reason why Scientology ended up stalking me is that while I was taking the Dianetics course, the anonymous cyber hacker group had published all of their content on the internet. And since I was on the local list of people attending courses there, my name showed up on a list. And so I was being targeted by Anonymous as being a Cylon. They called me a Scientologist. They believed I was a Scientologist, and I was facing online and in real life harassment as a result. And then weirdly, the Scientologists thought I was a plant from Anonymous. So I had simultaneous concurrent gang stalking from Anonymous and Scientology. I was like kind of caught in this thing when I'm just an objective researcher, caught in the middle of it. But the thing about Scientology and my interest in it is that, like Thelema, like Freemasonry, we're talking about organizations that have a hierarchy with levels of knowledge that are stratified by those who pay more, spend more time in, or more deeply invested. But it also they spy on their members. To get into the Masonic cult, you have to agree to have a background check done on you, to have people doing character checks. They ask people in your past about you. They went through my books, read all the books on my bookshelf. They right in front of me, they're at my place before I get in, the Freemasonic group, and they're like asking questions about the various books I'm reading. I had a book by Aleister Crowley's secretary, Israel Regardie. It was called, I think it's called The Garden of Pomegranates, about the Tree of Life and the Kabbalah. So they're asking me about my background. They're talking to people behind my back with my permission. So that's part of getting in. Well, with Scientology, you go through a period of time where they're asking questions, finding stuff out about you, and it's all going into the files. And it's all building, I think, files. And the people higher up have access to what's on your files. That's one of the main controversies. But again, we're all being stalked 24/7, more than any of these cults could ever dream of, just through our involvement in the internet. I mean, there's no privacy. Privacy is a hoax. Speaking of hoaxes. And we all carry the all-seeing eye in our pocket, HAL 9000, the monolith that we are merging with, your smartphone. Okay, this has been great. Appreciate the caller. He had been trying to reach the Infinite Plane radio live stream chat for some time. I think we caught up on a lot of the important information. Something about World War III starting, but I just get bored. Whenever I hear about World War III, I'm like, okay, fireworks, hype, maybe we'll get some atrocity propaganda. We didn't get into this one too deep. Astrology influencer disturbed by eclipse killed partner, infant child, and herself. 34-year-old woman. Now, I'm pretty sure she's 33. 34 is the new 33. They use it to distract people like us. So a 34-year-old, probably 33, who worked as an astrology influencer killed her baby and her partner after posting a warning about spiritual warfare on the eclipse. Danielle Johnson pushed her children from the car and drove at 100 miles an hour into a tree. And prior to this, she said the eclipse would be the epitome of spiritual warfare. So this story came out recently. Astrologer suspected of double murder suicide on the eclipse. Went by Ayoka, very popular influencer. And they made a point to say she threw her baby out the window, and I heard the word baby a lot of times. And then later with this stabbing in Melbourne, they kept saying the baby, the baby. I'm like, But again, she's reported to be 34, and I'm pretty sure she was 33. I'd like to see her birth date because they're trying to kind of efface just how obvious they are with all of their scripting. So I guess at least one person had their apocalypse. The rest of us had to go home disappointed. All right, everyone, thank you for the comments. Thanks for the call, as usual. We have great callers here, and it's nice to talk to people who are first-time callers every time. And we'll be back tomorrow, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Be there if you want to hear JL26 giving us an update on everything. I want to say thanks for all the super chats, supporting the channel, keeping the gas in the think tank, because we are starting off on a very important mission here as we create and fill what is going to be described as a parallel media. All right, this is Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms, Auto Hoax.
I'm on Auto Hoax, and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis.